The small transport ship moved slowly through space toward New Haven Station. Inside, 23 human families sat in their seats, looking out the windows at the stars. They were moving to a new home on the colony world. Children pressed there, faces against the glass, watching the distant lights. Amy Martinez sat next to her mother Lisa, holding a small stuffed bear. She was 8 years old with brown hair and bright eyes. Her father Carlos worked as an engineer and was excited about his new job on New Haven. Lisa taught children at school and had already packed her teaching books. "How much longer, Mom?" Amy asked, swinging her legs. "Just 2 more days, sweetheart," Lisa said, brushing Amy's hair back. "Then we'll see our new home." The transport ship was not very big. It carried families and their belongings, but it had no weapons. The pilot, Captain Murphy, had flown this route many times before. He thought it was safe. Most alien races left human ships alone because humans seemed weak and poor. Far away, hidden behind a large asteroid, 3 dark ships waited. They belonged to the Zephyrians, a race of tall aliens with gray skin and sharp teeth. The Zephyrians made money by capturing other beings and selling them as slaves. Their leader, Captain Vextar, studied the human ship on his screen. "Easy target," Vextar said to his crew. His voice sounded like metal scraping stone. "Humans have no real weapons. We take what we want and leave." Commander Krellmuth stood behind him. Krellmuth was younger but careful. He had heard stories about humans that worried him. "Captain, should we really take their young ones? Some species say humans act strange when their children are threatened." Vextar laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Old stories told by weak races. Humans are soft. They cry and beg, but they do not fight well. We have raided their ships before with no problems." The 3 Zephyrian ships moved out from behind the asteroid. They were much bigger than the human, transport and covered with weapons. Their dark metal hulls reflected no light. They surrounded the human ship like wolves around a sheep. Captain Murphy saw the alien ships on his instruments. His hands shook as he reached for the emergency button. "All passengers, this is the captain. We have hostile ships approaching. Move to the emergency stations now." The families on the transport ship began to panic. Parents grabbed their children. People ran toward the emergency pods at the back of the ship. Amy held tight to her stuffed bear as her father picked her up. "Stay calm," Carlos told his family. "We'll get to the pods and be safe." But the Zephyrian ships fired first. Blue energy beams hit the transport ship's engines. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on dim and flickering. The ship shook hard, throwing people to the floor. "Engine room is hit," Captain Murphy announced over the speakers. "We cannot run. Prepare for boarding." Lisa Martinez held Amy close. "Everything will be okay, baby. Daddy and I will protect you." The Zephyrian ships attached to the human transport with metal claws. Loud banging sounds came from the walls as the aliens cut through the hull. Carlos put Amy behind him as armed Zephyrians entered the ship. The aliens were 7 feet tall with long arms and cold yellow eyes. They wore dark armor and carried energy weapons. They moved through the ship quickly, grabbing humans and pushing them together in groups. "Take the strong ones," Vextar ordered his soldiers. "Leave the old and sick. We want workers, not dead weight." The Zephyrians separated the humans into 2 groups. Adults who looked healthy went to one side. Children and elderly people went to another. Amy cried as a Zephyrian soldier pulled her away from her parents. "Amy!" Lisa screamed, reaching for her daughter. A Zephyrian pushed Lisa back hard. "Mom, Dad!" Amy called out, tears running down her face. Carlos tried to fight his way to Amy, but 3 Zephyrians held him back. "Let her go. Take me instead. She's just a child." Commander Krellmuth watched this scene and felt worried. The humans were crying and fighting harder than usual when separated from their young. He had seen other species give up quickly, but these humans kept struggling even when they had no chance to win. "Captain," Krellmuth said quietly to Vextar, "look how they fight for the small one. Maybe we should leave the children." Vextar hit Krellmuth across the face. "You are weak like them. The child will bring good money at the slave markets. Young ones learn to work better than adults." The Zephyrians forced the captured humans onto their ships. Amy found herself in a dark cargo hold with 12 other people. She sat in a corner, hugging her stuffed bear and crying quietly. An old man named Pete sat next to her. "Don't be scared, little one," Pete whispered. "Your parents are strong. They'll find a way to help us." But Amy felt very alone and afraid. She did not know that her parents were on a different ship, or that Captain Murphy had managed to send an emergency message before the Zephyrians destroyed the transport's communication system. On the Zephyrian flagship, Vextar looked at his prisoners and smiled. Humans always sold well in the slave markets because they could work hard and did not get sick easily. He planned to sell them on Grim Station in 3 days. "Set course for the markets," Vextar ordered. "These humans will make us rich." As the Zephyrian ships flew away, pieces of the broken human transport floated in space. Some emergency pods had escaped during the attack, carrying survivors back toward human space. Lisa and Carlos Martinez were in one of these pods, holding each other and crying for their lost daughter. They did not know that their emergency pod's automatic systems were already sending a distress signal. The signal carried their names, Amy's name, and the code that meant "child taken by hostile aliens." This code would reach Earth in 18 hours. Back on the Zephyrian ship, Amy tried to be brave. She remembered what her father taught her about being strong during hard times. She looked around the dark cargo hold and began to count the other prisoners. She noticed how many guards there were, and when they changed shifts. Amy did not know why she was paying attention to these things. She was just 8 years old. But something inside her mind was working, watching, and learning. Her father had always said she was smart like her mother and tough like him. The other prisoners tried to comfort each other in the darkness. They were scared and did not know what would happen to them. But Amy sat quietly, listening to the guards talk and watching their movements. She was already starting the plan, even though she did not realize it yet. Far away in space, the emergency pods continued their journey back to human territory. The automatic distress signals grew stronger as they got closer to the communication relays. Soon, very soon, people on Earth would know that Amy Martinez had been taken. And when humans learned that aliens had stolen one of their children, everything would change. The emergency signal from the Martinez family's escape pod reached Earth 18 hours after the attack. It traveled through space at the speed of light, jumping from one communication station to the next until it arrived at Fleet Command Headquarters. In New York, Lieutenant Emma Stone sat at her desk in the intelligence office, drinking coffee and reading reports. She was 28 years old with red hair and green eyes. Emma had worked in intelligence for 5 years and had seen many distress calls from human ships. Most were accidents or equipment failures. Some were pirate attacks, but this signal was different. Emma's computer screen showed the emergency code that made her heart stop. Code 7. Child taken by hostile aliens. She had never seen this code before in a real situation. She had only read about it in training manuals. Emma ran down the hallway to Admiral Jake Morrison's office. Admiral Morrison was 55 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been in the Space Navy for 30 years and was known for being calm during difficult situations. "Admiral," Emma said, breathing hard from running, "we have a Code 7 situation." Admiral Morrison looked up from his paperwork. His face became very serious. "Show me." Emma put the report on his desk. Admiral Morrison read it carefully. His Hands began to shake slightly as he read the details. Amy Martinez, age 8, taken by Zephyrian raiders along with 12 other humans. Parents survived in escape pod. Location of attack near New Haven Colony route. How long ago? Admiral Morrison asked. 20 hours, sir. The signal just reached us. Admiral Morrison stood up and walked to his window. He looked out at the earth below, thinking about his own grandchildren who were about Amy's age. Every adult human knew about the protective feelings that came when children were in danger. But Emma had never seen these feelings on such a large scale. Emma, I want you to find everything we know about this child and her family. Then I want you to track down every piece of information we have about Zephyrian raiding patterns in the last 6 months. Yes, sir. Should I contact the other admirals? Admiral Morrison turned around. His eyes had changed. They looked harder now, like steel. Send a message to every fleet commander in human space. Tell them we have a Code 7 situation. They'll know what that means. Far across the galaxy on the planet Keth Prime, an old Zephyrian named Nethrol was working late in his office. Nethrol was different from most Zephyrians. He was a scholar who studied other species to help his people understand their enemies and trading partners. Nethrol had gray scales that were lighter than other Zephyrians, and his yellow eyes were dim with age. He was over 200 years old and had spent most of his life reading and learning. His office was full of books and data files about hundreds of different alien species. A message came to his computer from the intelligence network, Zephyrian. Raiders had captured humans near the New Haven route. Among the prisoners was a human child. Nethrol read the message 3 times. Then his hands started shaking. He quickly typed commands into his computer, searching through his files about humans. Most Zephyrians thought humans were weak and stupid. They had small teeth, no claws, and their skin was soft. Human ships were not very advanced, and their weapons were simple, but Nethrol had found old records that told a different story. The first record was from the Vorthan Empire, written 50 years ago. A Vorthan pirate ship had captured a human family and taken their 2 children to sell as slaves. Within 1 week, human warships had appeared throughout Vorthan space. The humans had not asked for negotiation. They had not demanded ransom. They had simply begun destroying every Vorthan military base they could find. The second record was from the Krullian Republic, 30 years ago. Krullian scientists had taken human children for experiments, thinking humans would not notice a few missing people. The human response had been swift and terrible. Krullian colonies had been evacuated. Their government had surrendered completely and agreed to pay money to human families for 100 years. The third record was the most frightening. It was from the Altarian Confederation, just 10 years ago. Altarian slavers had captured a human school transport with 43 children aboard. The human fleet that responded had been bigger than anything the Altarians had ever seen. They had fought with a determination that scared even hardened warriors. The Altarians had returned every child unharmed and had promised never to enter human space again. All 3 records mentioned the same thing. When humans found out that their children were taken, they changed. They stopped following normal rules of war. They stopped caring about their own safety. They focused on one thing only, getting their children back. Nethrol stood up from his desk, his old bones creaking. He had to warn the High Council immediately. But first, he needed to find out which raiding captain had been stupid enough to take a human child. He checked the raiding schedules and found the answer. Captain Vextar had led the attack on the human transport. Vextar was young and greedy, and he did not listen to warnings from older Zephyrians. Nethrol tried to contact Vextar's ship, but the captain was already in hyperspace heading for the slave markets. The old scholar's worst fears were coming true. Vextar did not know what he had done, and now it might be too late to fix it. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison had called a meeting with all the fleet commanders. The meeting room was full of serious faces. These were men and women who had fought pirates and protected human colonies for years. But they had never dealt with a situation like this. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Morrison said, "we have a human child in alien hands. Amy Martinez, 8 years old, daughter of Carlos and Lisa Martinez. She was taken by Zephyrian raiders 22 hours ago." The room was completely quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. Captain Roy Henderson of the battleship USS Vengeance raised his hand. He was 42 years old, with brown hair and scars on his face from old battles. "Admiral, what are our orders?" "We are activating Protocol 7, Admiral Morrison said. "Every available ship will join the search and rescue operation. We will find this child and bring her home." Colonel Beth Williams, commander of the Space Marines, stood up. She was a tough woman with short black hair and muscles from years of training. "My Marines are ready, Admiral. Just tell us where to go." Admiral Morrison looked around the room at his officers. These people had families of their own. They understood that Amy Martinez could be any of their children. The thought made them angry and determined. "I want search teams sent to every known pirate base in 3 sectors, Admiral Morrison said. "I want intelligence officers questioning every informant we have. I want our best ships ready for combat. And I want everyone to understand that we do not negotiate with people who take our children." As the meeting ended, Lieutenant Emma Stone was already working on tracking the Zephyrian ships. She had found reports of 3 dark ships seen near the attack site. She was following their possible routes and looking for clues about where they might go. On the planet Kef Prime, Nethril finally reached the High Council chamber. The 5 council members looked annoyed that he had interrupted their evening meal. "What is so important, old one?" asked Council Leader Vexener. "We have made a terrible mistake," Nethril said, his voice shaking. "One of our raiding captains has taken a human child. The humans will come for her. They will not stop until they get her back." The council members laughed. They had heard of human military forces, but they were not impressed. "Let them come," Vexener said. "We have the strongest fleet in this sector. Humans are weak creatures with simple weapons." Nethril opened his data files and began to read the old records about what happened to other species who had taken human children. As he read, the laughter in the room slowly died away. By the time he finished reading, the council chamber was silent. The 5 council members were no longer laughing. They were beginning to understand that their people might be in serious danger, but Captain Vextar was still in hyperspace, heading for the slave markets with Amy Martinez in his cargo hold. And somewhere in human space, the largest rescue fleet in history was beginning to gather. 3 days after Amy Martinez was taken, the largest human fleet in history began to move. Ships came from every corner of human space. Military vessels, patrol boats, and even armed merchant ships joined the search. They all had one mission: find the little girl and bring her home. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the command ship USS Liberty, watching the fleet gather. There were over 200 ships of different sizes. Some were big battleships with heavy weapons. Others were small scout ships that could move fast and hide easily. All of them were ready to fight. "Admiral," Lieutenant Emma Stone said, walking up to him with a data pad. "We have tracked the Zephyrian raiders to 3 possible locations. They could be heading to the slave markets on Grim Station, the mining colonies near Vega 7, or the black market on Titan Base." Admiral Morrison studied the information. "What do you think, Emma?" "Grim Station, sir. It's the biggest slave market in this sector. If they want to sell prisoners quickly, that's where they would go." Admiral Morrison nodded. "Send the main fleet to Grim Station. But I want search teams checking the other locations too. We cannot take any chances." Captain Roy Henderson received his orders aboard the USS Vengeance. His ship was one of the newest and strongest in the human fleet. It had thick armor and powerful weapons. But more importantly, it had a crew that was angry and determined. "All hands, this is the captain," Roy announced over the ship's speakers. "We are going to find Amy Martinez and bring her home. I don't care how many alien ships we have to go through. That little girl is coming home to her parents." The crew of the Vengeance cheered. They had all seen the pictures of Amy that were sent to every ship. She looked like their own daughters, sisters, and nieces. The thought of her being scared and alone made them want to fight. Colonel Beth Williams was preparing her Marines for combat. The Space Marines were the toughest soldiers in the human military. They were trained to fight in the most dangerous situations. Beth had chosen her best people for this mission. "Listen up, Marines," Beth said to her soldiers. "We are going to rescue a little girl from alien slavers. I want everyone to remember that we are not just fighting for one child. We are showing the galaxy that humans protect their own." Sergeant Danny Cooper raised his hand. He was a big man, with kind eyes, who had 3 children of his own. "Colonel, what are our rules of engagement?" "Simple, Danny. Anyone who gets between us and that little girl gets moved out of the way. We are not here to start a war, but we will finish one if we have to." The human fleet moved through space faster than anyone expected. They ignored normal space traffic rules and flew straight through areas that were usually off limits. When alien patrol ships tried to stop them, the humans simply said they were on a rescue mission and kept going. On the planet Tritania, Ambassador Levza watched the human fleet pass by his world. The Tritanians were a peaceful species who tried to avoid conflicts. Levza had never seen so many human ships moving together before. "Contact the human fleet," Levza told his communications officer. "I want to speak with their commander." A few minutes later, Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen. The Tritanian ambassador was surprised by what he saw. The human admiral looked calm, but his eyes were cold and hard. "Admiral Morrison," Levza said, "I am Ambassador Levza of the Tritanian Republic. We have noticed your fleet passing through our space. Is there something we can help you with?" "The Zephyrians have taken a human child," Admiral Morrison said simply. "We are going to get her back. Perhaps we could help negotiate a peaceful solution," Levza offered. "The Tritanian Republic has good relations with many species. We could arrange a meeting." Admiral Morrison's expression did not change. "Ambassador, you have 30 seconds to tell me anything you know about Zephyrian slave markets. After that, I suggest you stay out of our way." Levza felt a chill run down his spine. He had dealt with many species over the years, but he had never seen determination like this. I don't know anything about their slave markets, Admiral. But surely you don't mean to attack them without trying to talk first?" "Return the child unharmed, and we will talk," Admiral Morrison said. "Hurt her, and we will reduce every Zephyrian installation to scrap metal. There will be no negotiation." The communication ended, leaving Ambassador Levza staring at a blank screen. He immediately sent a message to the Galactic Council, warning them that the humans were preparing for war. On Keth Prime, the Zephyrian High Council was meeting an emergency session. Nethril sat at a small table, surrounded by data files and old books. The 5 council members looked worried as they read the reports coming in from across the galaxy. "The humans have over 200 ships moving toward our territory," Council Leader Thexner said. "Our intelligence says they are armed for war." "I told you this would happen," Nethril said quietly. "The old records were clear. Humans do not negotiate when their children are threatened." "But they are still just humans," another council member said. "Our ships are bigger and stronger." Nethril shook his head. "Size and strength do not matter when you are fighting someone who has nothing to lose. The humans will not stop until they get their child back. They will not care about their own casualties. They will not care about the cost." "Then what do you suggest we do?" Thexner asked. "Contact Captain Vextar immediately," Nethrel said. "Tell him to return the human child to the nearest human colony. Give her back before the human fleet finds him." "That will make us look weak," one of the council members protested. "Better to look weak than to be dead," Nethrel replied. The council tried to contact Captain Vextar, but his ship was still in hyperspace. They could not reach him until he arrived at Grimm Station. By then, it might be too late. Meanwhile, on Vextar's ship, Amy Martinez was learning about her captors. She had been watching the guards for 3 days, counting how many there were. And when they changed shifts, she was a smart little girl, and she was beginning to understand the patterns. During the day, there were usually 3 guards in the cargo hold where the prisoners were kept. At night, there were only 2. The guards talked to each other in their own language, but Amy was starting to understand some of their words. "How are you doing, sweetie?" asked an older prisoner named Helen. Helen was a grandmother who had been traveling to New Haven to visit her son. She had been taking care of Amy since they were captured. "I'm okay," Amy said, hugging her stuffed bear. "When are my mom and dad coming to get me?" Helen's eyes filled with tears, but she tried to smile. "I'm sure they're looking for you, right?" "Now, honey, your parents love you very much," Amy nodded. She believed that her parents would come for her. But she was also thinking about other things. She had noticed that one of the guards was always eating during his shift. Another guard liked to take naps when he thought no one was watching. The third guard was nervous and jumped at loud noises. Amy did not know why she was paying attention to these details. She was just 8 years old. But something in her mind was working, planning, getting ready. Her father had always said she was too smart for her own good. Far away in space, the human search fleet was spreading out across 3 star systems. Scout ships moved ahead of the main fleet, checking every asteroid, every space station, and every planet for signs of the Zephyrian raiders. Lieutenant Tom Bradley was piloting a small scout ship called the Hawk. He was 25 years old and had been in the Navy for 4 years. Tom had a younger sister who was about Amy's age, and the thought of her being in danger made him work harder than ever before. "Command, this is Hawk 7, Tom reported over the radio. "I'm picking up energy signatures near the Grimm Station. System, looks like 3 ships, possibly Zephyrian design." "Copy that, Hawk 7, came the reply from Admiral Morrison. "Do not engage, report their exact position, and wait for backup." Tom watched the 3 ships on his scanner. They were still far away, but they matched the description of the raiders who had taken Amy. His hands tightened on the controls of his ship. He wanted to attack them right now, but he knew he had to wait for the main fleet. Back on the USS Vengeance, Captain Roy Henderson was studying the battle plans. His ship would lead the attack on Grimm Station if the little girl was found there. Roy had fought in many battles, but this one felt different. This time they were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for a child. "Captain," his first officer said, "we're receiving reports from our scout ships. They may have found the raiders." Roy stood up from his chair. "Then it's time to bring Amy Martinez home." The human fleet began to move faster, converging on Grimm Station like a pack of wolves closing in on their prey. Soon, very soon, Captain Vextar would learn what happened to aliens who stole human children. Captain Vextar's ship dropped out of hyperspace near Grimm Station. The massive space station floated in the darkness like a metal city. Ships from dozens of different alien species were docked at its ports. Grimm Station was known throughout the galaxy as a place where anything could be bought or sold, including people. Vextar looked at the station with satisfaction. In a few hours, he would sell his human prisoners and make enough money to retire. He had no idea that human scout ships were already watching him from the shadows of nearby asteroids. "Prepare the prisoners for transport," Vextar ordered his crew. "I want them cleaned up and ready to show to buyers." In the cargo hold, Amy Martinez was still watching and learning. She had figured out that they were going to a place where people were sold like animals. The thought scared her, but she tried to be brave like her father had taught her. "Stay close to me, honey," Helen whispered to Amy. "No matter what happens, don't let them separate us." Amy nodded, but she was also thinking about the things she had noticed. The guard named Grix always ate his food at the same time each day. The guard called Zex fell asleep during the night shift. And the nervous guard, Ralt, was afraid of loud noises. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Tom Bradley was reporting from his scout ship. "Command, this is Hawk 7. The Zephyrian vessels have docked at Grimm Station. I can see them moving prisoners through the airlock." Admiral Morrison's voice came over the radio, cold and hard. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We have found our target. The rescue operation begins now." The human fleet moved toward Grimm Station like a storm cloud. Over 200 ships of different sizes spread out around the station. The aliens at Grimm Station had never seen so many human vessels in one place. Station. Commander Bluxta was a fat alien with purple skin and 4 arms. He had run Grimm Station for 20 years and had dealt with many different species. But when he saw the human fleet on his sensors, he began to sweat. "Open a communication channel to the human fleet." Bluxta ordered his communications officer, Admiral. Morrison's face appeared on the main screen in the station's control room. His expression was calm, but his eyes looked like ice. "I am Admiral Morrison of the Human Federation Fleet," he said. "You have 5 minutes to return Amy Martinez to us unharmed." Bluxta's 4 hands shook as he spoke. "Admiral, I don't know who you're talking about. We have many different people here from many species. Amy Martinez, 8 years old. Brown hair, brought here by Zephyrian raiders about an hour ago. You have 4 minutes. "Admiral, please be reasonable," Bluxta said. "Grimm Station is neutral territory. We cannot just search through all our visitors." Admiral Morrison's expression did not change. 3 minutes. On the USS Vengeance, Captain Roy Henderson was preparing his ship for battle. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Kate Murphy, was checking all the gun systems. "Captain," Kate said, "all weapons are ready. We can punch through their shields in the first attack." "Good," Roy replied. "But remember, there are innocent people on that station. We need to be careful with our shots." Colonel Beth Williams was getting her Marines ready for boarding action. Sergeant Danny Cooper was checking his equipment one more time. "Sergeant," Beth said, "your team will go straight to where the prisoners are being held. Get Amy and get out. My team will handle any resistance." Danny nodded. He had looked at Amy's picture so many times that he felt like she was his own daughter. "We'll bring her home, Colonel." Back on Grimm Station, Bluxta was desperately trying to find the human child. He sent his security teams through the station, looking for any sign of recent prisoner arrivals. "Commander," one of his officers reported, "we found the Zephyrian captain. He's in Auction Hall 7 with a group of prisoners." Bluxta ran too. The auction hall as fast as his short legs could carry him. He found Captain Vextar showing his prisoners to potential buyers. Amy was standing with the other humans, still holding her stuffed bear. "Vextar, you fool," Bluxta shouted. "Do you know what you've done?" Captain Vextar looked annoyed. "I brought valuable prisoners to sell. What's your problem?" "The human fleet is outside with over 200 ships. They want the child back," Vextar laughed. "Let them want. They are just humans. What can they do to us here?" As if to answer his question, the station suddenly shook. The lights flickered and alarms began to sound. The human fleet had fired a warning shot that hit the station's outer shields. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the station's communication system. "This is your final warning. Return Amy Martinez now, or we will take her by force." Bluxta grabbed Vextar by the arm. "Give me the child. If we don't return her, they will destroy the station." "I paid good money for these prisoners," Vextar said. "I'm not giving them away for free." The station shook again, harder this time. The human fleet was no longer firing warning shots. They were targeting the station's weapons and shield generators. On his scout ship, Lieutenant Tom Bradley was providing targeting information to the main fleet. "Command, I have visual on the auction halls. The prisoners are in Section 7. "Copy that, Hawk 7. Admiral Morrison replied. "All ships, prepare for boarding action. I want that child found and extracted within 10 minutes. The first wave of human boarding pods launched from the fleet. These were small, armored ships designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver Marines directly into battle. Colonel Beth Williams led the first pod, followed by Sergeant Danny Cooper and his team. The boarding pods hit Grim Station like metal bullets. They cut through the outer hull and opened into the station's corridors. Human Marines poured out, moving quickly toward the auction halls. The station's security forces tried to stop them, but they had never faced humans who were fighting to save one of their children. The Marines moved with a determination that frightened even experienced. "Fighters, this way!" Danny shouted to his team. "The prisoners should be in the next section." They ran through the station's corridors, following the maps that intelligence had provided. Other teams spread out to search different areas. The humans were not taking any chances. They would search every room if necessary. In Auction Hall 7, the alien buyers were panicking. They had come to Grim Station to buy slaves, not to fight in a war. Most of them ran for their ships as soon as the human attack began. Amy heard the sounds of fighting getting closer. She looked at Helen and whispered, "I think my parents found me." Helen smiled through her tears. "I think you're right, sweetheart." Captain Vextar was still trying to organize resistance when Sergeant Danny Cooper and his Marines burst into the auction hall. The big sergeant looked around the room until he saw Amy standing with the other prisoners. "Amy Martinez?" Danny called. "Out, that's me," Amy said, running toward him with her stuffed bear. Danny knelt down and picked up the little girl. She was smaller than he had expected, and she looked tired and scared. But she was alive and unharmed. "It's okay, sweetheart," Danny said gently. "We're here to take you home to your mommy and daddy." Amy hugged him tightly. "I knew you would come. I knew my parents wouldn't leave me here." Captain Vextar tried to stop them, but the other Marines surrounded him quickly. He found himself looking at the barrels of several human weapons. "I wouldn't move if I were you," one of the Marines said. Colonel Beth Williams arrived with more Marines. She looked at Amy in Danny's arms and smiled. "Is this our girl?" "Yes, ma'am," Danny replied. "Amy Martinez, safe and sound." "Outstanding," Beth said. Then she spoke into her radio. "Command, this is Colonel Williams. We have recovered the package. Repeat, Amy Martinez is safe and in our custody." Admiral Morrison's voice came back immediately. "Excellent work, Colonel. Get her to the medical bay for a checkup, then bring her home." As the Marines escorted Amy and the other prisoners to safety, the fighting on Grim Station began to die down. The station's defenders had surrendered when they realized they were fighting humans who would not give up. Amy looked back at Captain Vextar as they led him away in chains. The Zephyrian captain finally understood what he had done. He had taken a human child, and now his whole world was about to change. But for Amy Martinez, the nightmare was over. She was going home to her parents, and the entire human fleet was there to make sure she arrived safely. Amy Martinez sat in the medical bay of the USS Vengeance, holding her stuffed bear while Dr. Susan Clark checked her health. The doctor was a kind woman with gentle hands who reminded Amy of her mother. "You're a very brave girl, Amy," Dr. Clark said as she finished her examination. "You're perfectly healthy, and you'll be home with your parents very soon." Amy smiled for the first time in days. "Will I really see Mommy and Daddy again?" "Yes, sweetheart. They're waiting for you at New Haven Station. We're taking you there." Right now, Captain Roy Henderson walked into the medical bay. He was a big man with scars on his face. But when he looked at Amy, his eyes were gentle. "Hello, Amy," Roy said, kneeling down so he was at her eye level. "I'm Captain Henderson. How are you feeling?" "Better now," Amy said. "Thank you for coming to get me. The bad aliens were going to sell me to other bad people." Roy's face became hard when he heard this, but he kept his voice calm. "Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. We made sure those bad aliens will never hurt anyone again." On Grin Station, the human Marines were still in control. They had arrested Captain Vextar and his crew, along with several station officials who had been involved in the slave trade. Sergeant Danny Cooper was questioning the prisoners, getting information about other victims who might need rescue. "Where are the other humans you captured?" Danny asked Vextar. The Zephyrian captain sat in chains, his yellow eyes full of fear. They were sold to different buyers. "I don't know where they went." "You better start remembering," Danny said coldly. "Because until we find every single person you took, you're going to stay in our prison." Colonel Beth Williams was coordinating with other rescue teams throughout the galaxy. The human fleet had spread out to follow every lead, tracking down other victims of Zephyrian raids. They were not just saving Amy anymore. They were saving everyone. Back on the planet Keth Prime, the Zephyrian High Council was meeting in panic. Reports were coming in from across their territory. Human ships were appearing everywhere, demanding the return of all human prisoners. Zephyrian bases were surrendering without fighting. "The humans have destroyed our raiding fleet," Council Leader Vexner said, his voice shaking. "They captured 3 of our strongest bases in one day. Our military commanders are afraid to fight them." Old Nethral sat at his table, looking tired but not surprised. "I told you this would happen. You cannot steal a human child and expect them to do nothing." "But they got their child back," another council member said. "Why don't they stop?" "Because this is not just about one child anymore," Nethral explained. "The humans are making sure this never happens again. They are showing the galaxy what happens to people who threaten their young." A communication officer ran into the council chamber. "Council Leader, Admiral Morrison of the human fleet is requesting to speak with you." Vexner's hands shook as he activated the communication screen. Admiral Morrison's face appeared, calm and serious. "Council Leader Vexner," Admiral Morrison said. "I am Admiral Morrison of the Human Federation Fleet. We need to talk." "Admiral," Vexner said, trying to sound confident, "surely we can work out some kind of agreement. We have returned your child safely." "Yes, you have," Admiral Morrison replied, "and now we're going to discuss what happens next." The Admiral's image was replaced by a list of demands. The Zephyrians would pay money to the families of every human they had ever captured. They would close all their slave markets. They would hand over every official who had been involved in raiding human ships. And they would allow human inspectors to check their facilities whenever they wanted. "These demands are impossible," Vexner protested. "Our people will never agree to this." Admiral Morrison's face returned to the screen. "Council Leader, let me explain something to you. 3 days ago, you had a choice. You could have returned Amy Martinez immediately and apologized. Instead, you chose to keep her and sell her like an animal." The Admiral's voice became colder. "Now you have a different choice. You can agree to our demands and change your ways, or you can continue to resist. If you choose to resist, we will remove your government and replace it with people who understand how to treat children properly." "You cannot threaten an entire planet," Vexner shouted. "We are not threatening," Admiral Morrison said calmly. "We are explaining consequences. You have 24 hours to decide." The communication ended, leaving the Zephyrian Council staring at a blank screen. Meanwhile, Amy Martinez was finally going home. The USS Vengeance had arrived at New Haven Station, where her parents were waiting. Carlos and Lisa Martinez stood at the docking bay, holding each other and crying with joy. When Amy walked off the ship with Captain Henderson, her parents ran to her. They hugged her so tightly that she could barely breathe, but she did not mind. She was home. Mommy, Daddy. Amy cried, tears streaming down her face. I knew you would find me. I knew you wouldn't leave me with the bad aliens. Carlos picked up his daughter, spinning her around. We would never leave you, princess. We love you so much. Lisa kissed Amy's forehead over and over again. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? No. Mommy, the doctor said I'm okay. And I learned things while I was there. I watched the guards and learned their patterns, just like Daddy taught me about solving problems. Carlos and Lisa looked at each other in amazement. Their 8-year-old daughter had been analyzing her captors and planning. Even in the worst situation of her life, Admiral Morrison arrived at the station a few hours later. He wanted to meet the little girl who had caused the largest military operation in human history. Amy was playing with her stuffed bear when he walked into the family's quarters. Amy, Admiral Morrison said, I'm Admiral Morrison. I wanted to meet the brave little girl who helped us find all those other people who needed rescue. Amy looked up at the Admiral with curious eyes. Did we really help other people? Yes, we did. Because of what happened to you, we found and rescued over 300 people from different species who were being held as slaves. You helped save them all. Amy smiled proudly. Daddy always says that when bad things happen, we should try to make something good come from them. Admiral Morrison knelt down next to Amy. Your daddy is a very smart man, and you are a very brave little girl. 2 days later, the Zephyrian High Council sent their answer. They agreed to all of the human demands. The alternative was too frightening to consider. They had seen what humans could do when their children were threatened, and they never wanted to see it again. Captain Vextar and his crew were sent to human prisons, where they would spend the rest of their lives. The slave markets on Grimm Station were shut down permanently. Other alien species throughout the galaxy took note of what had happened and made sure their own people understood the new rules. On Earth, Lieutenant Emma Stone was writing the final report about the rescue operation. She had been promoted to captain for her work in tracking down the kidnappers. Her report would be read by military officers throughout human space. The Amy Martinez rescue operation, she wrote, demonstrates the importance of protecting human children and the consequences faced by those who threaten them. All personnel should understand that the human military will use any means necessary to recover captured children and ensure their safety. 6 months later, Amy Martinez was back in school on New Haven Colony. She was a normal 8-year-old girl who played with her friends and learned her lessons. But sometimes, when other children asked about her adventure, she would tell them about the time the entire human fleet came to save her. My mommy and daddy love me so much, she would say, that they got the whole galaxy to help bring me home. And throughout the galaxy, other species made sure their children learned an important lesson. Never, ever threaten a human child. Because humans will move heaven and earth to protect their young, and they will make sure that anyone who hurts their children never gets the chance to do it again. The galaxy had learned to respect human determination. But more importantly, they had learned to respect human love.